Hello. Thank you all for joining me today. My name is Matthew Jones. If you like education and changing the world, you're going to love our presentation today, which is how to write an internationally focused outdoor education curriculum. We will be using the United Nations Zero Water Day Partnership outdoor curriculum as our framework for our discussion today. The United Nations Zero Water Day Partnership is a huge collaboration started by Julian Fisher around 14 different countries right now are co-aligning with the Zero Water Day. Now, we'll get back to that later. There's, but right now, there's 5 main steps in creating a curriculum. Step 1, creating the bones. This is creating the framework and everything we're going to be basing our activities off of. That's the goals, the topics, the approach, the audience, and the layout. Step 2 is filling the contents, pretty much creating the activities. Step 3, implementation. And step 4, evaluation. Go! As you can guess, our first thing we focus on, this is what we base everything we do the curriculum on, is the goals we establish for the curriculum or the project itself. For the Zero Water Day Partnership, the overall objective was to instill an understanding of mountains as a water hub of the world and the importance of mountain watersheds for downstream communities, the youth of these communities, especially relating to human health as well as environmental health, as well as empowering the youth in these communities to take action to help preserve and conserve these environments and especially the water systems at play. The outdoor curriculum was an extension of the main learning plan created by Julian Fisher for the Zero Water Day Partnership that aimed to utilize the outdoors to enhance the learning of the students through connecting the topics taught and these goals to the outdoors, and through the outdoors, teaching the outdoors, also connected to the live students. It was also supposed to act as a thought starter for schools because many of these schools came up with their own activities. This is supposed to be a thought starter for these schools. That way, when they're creating their own activities or whatever have you, they have something to base it off of. They give them different ways of thinking. So now we have those goals. Our next step, what topics are we going to be teaching about this to help support these goals? These are the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It's a common word. There are 17 different goals, and throughout this curriculum, especially in the early learning steps, which we'll discuss later, these are discussed and utilized to show, hey, people are doing things. That's a really big topic we wanted to talk about. Our next topic we wanted to discuss personally was using native knowledge of these landscapes to help teach the youth. And finally, oh sorry, I dropped that, my bad. This is an infographic from the Mountain Biodiversity Matters Day. And this is a lot of different topics that I all want to discuss because it all relates back to water in some way and the health of the mountains. Once we have those topics, now we need to talk about the approach. There's many different ways to teach something, as we all know. This is known as pedagogy. Pedagogy means the art, science, or profession of teaching, especially education. Now, as we've all probably experienced, there's a lot of different ways to teach something. But for the sake of this curriculum, there's a couple of different ways I wanted to teach. And this is largely based off of students that I talked to about ways they wanted to learn. The first is something called experiential learning, which is pretty much learning from experience. What happened? What did I experience? Why did that happen? Finally, what do I do next? And then the next one is a very common one called place-based learning. This is, in essence, using the environment, using the place someone's in as the learning grounds for future growth. You use these different intergenerational, the environment, all of it, using learning practices, which hopefully leads to community change or community engagement from the students. Relates back to our goals once again. Now we have that, we go to our layout. The layout primarily is 5 learning steps, each with a different focus point. As see below, each one of these 5 learning steps is different. It explores different things. There is 15 activities in total relating to these 5 learning steps, which comes around to around 3 each. And once all of those learning steps are completed, then it goes to the action plan, where ideally we're translating the learning that the students did into tangible action. And after all this is done, the schools especially are going to be presenting at the COP26 conference, or just sharing what they did. Once we have that done, now it's time to make sure we have the audience figured out, because the audience of the curriculum determines what kind of activities we can do. So for this curriculum, we have around ages 11 through 18 in locations across the world. And the locations are super important because it also determines a lot of things, maybe what they can and can't do, the way they operate. So these are all different things that when I was a substitute teacher in Gunnison, I asked my students, how would you like to learn this curriculum? These were all things that they said. Well, the main things I took away from this was they wanted this to feel meaningful and relevant to them. So I tried doing that when I created these activities. So now we have all this done. I went and I was like, okay, I'm ready to create some activities. But hold your horses. There's a couple things we have to keep in mind. It has to be customizable. It has to be able to be used by teachers all across the world using different materials and whatever time frames they have to do it. So it has to be very customizable, and it has to find ways that every student can be successful. If a student feels successful, they want to learn the topic. And finally, we still want to use experiential education and place-based education models. So going back to the idea of students be successful, I utilize the Gardner's theory of multiple intelligence for every activity. This is around 8 different intelligences, and these are, in his theory, ways people learn and what people thrive in. So for each one of my activities, I tried to utilize at least 1 or 2 of these for each one. So throughout the curriculum, there was a variety. So what we're bringing up right now is one of the activities I created, just 15. We do not have time to go through each one of them, but as you can see in this one, we have intrapersonal, when the people are out there in the community and writing their diary to process what they've been learning. We have interpersonal, when the students are talking to each other. We have more linguistic, when they're crafting a story behind what they're doing, as well as more like naturalistic, like being out there in the nature and talking about it. And through this, there's a lot of different ways to be successful. This is using place-based education models because, as we saw, it's in the place that's going to lead to change, and also it's very customizable. The structure of this is supposed to be anything can happen. But you saw that activity, it took a lot of revisions to get there. Everything takes a lot of revisions. I went through around 8. Before we get to our final stage, which is our second and final stage, which is implementation. The next steps of this project is that the curriculum is going to be implemented at outdoor education centers, schools, and a lot of other places in learning in combination of activities developed by their schools. And it's also going to be displayed at the COP26 conference. Finally, I want to spend my last minute acknowledging some important people. Karen Hofshofer, my advisor, I could not have done this without you. You've been there for me every step of the way. Julian Fisher, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Everyone in the MEM and ROE program, thank you for not failing me and helping give me the best education I could have asked for. The Culver Institute, if it was not for you all making me into the educator I would not be in this program right now. Thank you all for everything you did for me. All my colleagues at MEM, there's so many of you to name, but all of you, so many of you have been there for me. I cannot thank you enough. Dr. John Hofshofer, you've been incredible. Thank you for everything. And finally, all my other friends along this journey, the people from Mass Audubon Wildwood Camp, my friends, everything. Finally, my parents, you've been there for me at the beginning and you're there for me at the end. Thank you so much for supporting my visions.